Okay. Today we just read Yosef was the second in command to the Pharaoh, and he was empowered by the Pharaoh to do whatever he wanted to do, pretty much. But still, his empowerment was limited by the Pharaoh. It was designed by the Pharaoh and limited by the Pharaoh, and so the strength that Yosef had wasn't without any limitation. There was limitation. On the other hand, Yehuda, he went against the government, against Yosef, against Paro, and he demonstrated that it doesn't matter what Yosef would say or Paro would say, he needs to free his brother no matter what's going to happen. And although it doesn't seem that it was warranted, but there's something about Yehuda's approach to Yosef, about Yehuda's coming before Yosef, and the way he came before Yosef, that actually empowered the Jewish people then when they came to Egypt, and also has relevance to us before the coming of Mashiach, that although Mashiach hasn't yet come, and we're still in the exile, but with the kind of strength that we have to have is similar to that of Yehuda. And the last farbrengen that we merited to have from the Rebbe spoke about the strength of Yehuda, and he said, I'm just going to say one point, that is that Yehuda was the grandfather of David, grandfather of Mashiach, and his position in front of Yosef has a lot to do with us, the moments before Mashiach's arrival. We have to learn something from what Yehuda did. And then we brought an example from Purim, from Hanukkah. We prepared for Purim, and that is that Mordechai. Sorry about that. Mordechai did not bow to Haman, and although Haman had the right from Achashverosh to make all kinds of rules, Mordechai didn't consider the rules. So Mordechai didn't consider Haman to be an entity. In fact, Mordechai not only did not bow down to Haman, but it says that Mordechai was a Yehudi. What's a Yehudi? Yehudi means someone who does not reckon at all with anything which is zara lei, anything which is not for Hashem. If it's not for Hashem, Mordechai doesn't consider that to be an entity. So while Haman represents idolatry and anything other than godliness, Yehuda represents the opposite, only godliness, and not ascribing any power to anything other than Hashem. So while Yosef expressed the will of Hashem being fulfilled in Egypt, it was to a limit. It left room for something else. Versus Yehuda, his service of Hashem didn't leave room for any kind of thing other than Hashem himself. Yehuda served Hashem in a way that there was no nature, there was no government. It was just what Hashem wants, and that's it. So, on that note, I want to share with you a little bit of the famous farbrengen that the previous Rebbe gave in Purim, Tafresh Pei Zayin, in Purim in 1927, I believe. The previous Rebbe, into his home, a lot of people came, and this farbrengen was remembered very much because, besides the events that happened at the farbrengen itself, but also because there were spies there from the KGB and the GPU, from the Yevsektia, from the arm of the KGB that was run by Jews for that was bent on destroying any vestige of Judaism in the Soviet Union, and it was the events of this farbrengen that eventually led to the previous Rebbe's arrest that same year. So this farbrengen was very unusual, and it displayed this kind of courage of Yehuda that there is nothing else. That all there is the will of Hashem. And I want to share some points of the farbrengen. It was a long farbrengen, but I want to share a couple of points in the farbrengen to give a little taste of what was going on then. And although we don't have the same challenges, Baruch Hashem, that was in Soviet Russia in that year, 1927, but nevertheless, we do need, as before the coming of Mashiach, to have the same kind of courage against the challenges that we have within ourselves and from without, not to be embarrassed and not to succumb to mediocrity. So let's try to get to the try to go to that place, go to that farbrengen of the Frierdiker Rebbe. So a lot of people came. The Frierdiker Rebbe's home was full of people, and the farbrengen began with the previous Rebbe sharing various things. He's mentioned, among other things, that the evil inclination tries to make a person bitter at a time of joy. It's supposed to be a time of joy. And he spoke about how he asked someone to give out l'chaim, to take for himself and give to others l'chaim, pour l'chaim for others, and a lot of l'chaim was drunk at farbrengen. Actually, the guy he told to take for himself and to give to others, he didn't take for himself. And the previous Rebbe noticed this, and he said to him that in chassidus there are two terms. One is mavir, and one is slapshus. Mavir means to just pass things over, and slapshus means to become, when something's given to you, to become absorbed and connected with it. So the previous Rebbe mentioned how sometimes you may speak to someone in a way that you bring them close to you, because the person won't be able to handle any stern words. So you're speaking to them in a very endearing way, not because the person has done anything to be especially worthy of such attention, but he needs that because he won't be able to hear anything else. And conversely, a Rebbe may speak to someone very sternly, but the guy may be really on a high level, but he's able to handle and go on an even higher level. So there's one chassid at the farbrengen whose name was Chaim Amstelvosky. The previous Rebbe said to him, "My father looked at you." And when the tzaddik looks at someone, it has an effect. And it affects not just you, but your family. Anyways, farbrengen was going on. But when midnight came, there was a lot of excitement at farbrengen. People were singing. And as the previous Rebbe described himself, there was great excitement and enthusiasm, and memories started to flow in the Frierdiker Rebbe himself and in the chassidim. And they were thinking about how many of the people 12 years before were in Lubavitch with Rebbe Rashab, and they would stand on the bleachers to listen to the Rebbe Rashab in the main study hall in Lubavitch, and the feelings that they had then with the Rebbe Rashab, and how the whole world was turned over since then, and the yeshiva was closed, and Lubavitch was exiled. They had to leave and to go from there to Rostov, and all the kinds of changes, and the war of brother, all kinds of things that happened, that things weren't the way they were before, and the nostalgia, or more accurately, the deep soul yearning for what was then and where they were at that point. In addition to just the actual being in the Rebbe's presence in the middle of the government of Stalin in Soviet Russia, that itself would have caused infinite excitement and the heart being open, considering all the challenges that they were ever increasing at that time. So, but suddenly at midnight, the previous Rebbe's crying, like a stream of tears coming from his eyes, and suddenly, as if he just landed from outer space, or as if he just rose up from the earth, he said that, listen, my brothers, Jews, especially Chassidim, he says, listen. He said that we're right now in the exact situation that our forefathers were when they left Egypt. They had the sea in front of them, the desert on their sides, and the Egyptians behind them. And the previous Rebbe said that that's a similar situation that they were in then, that they have the Efsektia, this arm of the KGB that was bent on destroying Judaism. They're behind us. They're like the Pharaoh and his army chasing after us. And in front of us is the sea of sacrifice, the sea of trusting in Hashem. And we have to jump into the fire of sacrifice. That's what previous they were talking about, jumping into the fire of sacrifice. He even made the point of saying, he said to one chassid that that you have to send your children to the cheder, to a Jewish school. And he said, if someone doesn't send their children to the school, to a Jewish school, and they send their children instead to the communist school, they won't, if they send their children to a Jewish school, meaning to study underground. And he was mentioning that the farbrengen, how that's legal. He said that according to the Russian constitution, everyone has a right to teach their children in any way that they want to, and it's legal, and they're allowed to do it. And he said that if someone sends their children to the Efsektia school, they won't survive the year. They will not. That's what he said. So, and then he called over one of his chassidim who worked as one of his secretaries, who was later killed by the Nazis, Machshamam, of Eliyachaim Altois, and he said to Rabbi Eliyachaim like this. He said, "This year you had a hard year because you didn't listen to what I asked you to do. What did I ask you to do? He said, I want you to put out a message to the entire Russia, which is 20,000 viewers by 20,000 viewers. Viewers is a measurement of distance. And I want the message to be this." He said, the Rebbe passed away, meaning his father passed away. He left over a son, and people don't know what kind of soul he has. Because if they knew what kind of soul he has, they wouldn't stand near him without going to the mikveh. And you have to send your children to go into a Jewish school. And a child doesn't go to a Jewish school as if someone has a child not going to a Jewish school, it's as if he doesn't have a child. And he asked Rabbi Eliyachaim if he would send this message out, that you have to send your children to a Jewish school. And he called over one chassid, Rabbi Zalman Nevler. He said to Rabbi Zalman, he said, do you know what to do if there would be a pile of dry wood and they would light a fire, and they ask you whether to send your child to to their school or to jump in the fire? Do you know what to do? And you need to jump into the fire instead of sending your child to the communist schools. Anyways, he asked Rabbi Eliyachaim 3 times. He said it three times over and over again that you had to send his children to a Jewish school, and if not, you will not survive the year. That's what he said over 3 times. And he tore open, not a Torah, but he uncovered his holy heart, he opened his shirt, and he started beating his chest to the point that his soul was coming out in his words. He was speaking in a way like with such force, such intensity, and he told Rabbi Eliyachaim, he said, I accept upon myself all of the 4 capital punishments of the Jewish court. In other words, I accept all kinds of death penalties. And he said to him, if you see my body burning, don't feel bad. The main thing is the mind, not the body. That's who he's speaking about. And the Meir Simcha Chaim, he approached the previous Rebbe and he said to him, we can't hear these words. We don't want to hear these words. We need our Rebbe to be here in this physical world. And all the Chassidim echoed this and said, yeah, we need the previous Rebbe to be here. And the previous Rebbe said that actually at one point, they called the previous Rebbe's mother to the farbrengen. They thought that if she came, Rebbe Steiner Sarah, she would be able to save the Rebbe from his pain. That he was clearly was affecting his health, the way he was speaking with such force. So she came, and when she came, the previous Rebbe stood up, and with great respect to his mother, he said, Mama, my mother, he said, please please go back into your room and say Tehillim with tears. The Tehillim with tears will help. That's what he said. And she was before she could say anything. He told her, whatever I'm doing this with my father's consent. It's not me. It's my father, meaning her husband, her late husband, Rebbe Tzimtzum late husband, the previous Rebbe's father. Whatever he was doing, the previous Rebbe was saying, he's doing this with his father's instruction and consent. I'm not sure exactly what this means, but the previous Rebbe shared the following at one point. He said, when a Meir Simcha came to the previous Rebbe and said to the previous Rebbe that we want the Rebbe to be here alive, we need the Rebbe here, the previous Rebbe said, but I asked my father, like Nikolai. My father said, yes, like Nikolai. And the Meir Simcha said, we don't know what that means. Can you please explain to us what that story is about? The previous Rebbe said, you don't know the story? And he started saying the story. He said that when Tsar Nikolai was just a heir to the throne, he was a prince, so he went for a military excursion, military training, and because he was the prince, it wasn't just like a regular training, but he maneuvered and the armies and he got all the soldiers to do some excellent tactics and training, and he really got things shaped up over there in the army. And he was very appreciative of the officers and the generals for the tremendous success that these maneuvers had. But his father was very upset about this. His father called him, and his father said to him, listen, I really appreciate, because the problem was the gifts that he gave to the officers were far beyond the coffers of the royal kingdom at that time. So his father called him over, and his father criticized him, and he said to him, listen, the fact that you did the maneuvers, I really appreciate that, and I like that, and I validate and I applaud what you've done for the soldiers. But the gifts that you gave, without, first of all, you didn't ask for permission. Second of all, was beyond what we could afford. And because of this, he exiled him from the capital for several years. Similarly, the previous Rebbe said by the Tzemach Tzedek was once approached by a chassid who needed a blessing for children, and the chassid, the Tzemach Tzedek told his son, the Maharil, Yehuda Leib of Kapus, later after Tzemach Tzedek passed away, he became a leader of a Hasidic dynasty called the Kapus Chassidim, and the Tzemach Tzedek asked him to bless this man with children. Why he didn't bless him himself, I have no idea, but that's what happened. So when he blessed him with children, he took the license of being able to bless, and he blessed not just with children, but blessed him his children should be wealthy, and all kinds of other blessings that weren't included in the words of Tzemach Tzedek. So Tzemach Tzedek found out about this, and he counselled him. He rebuked his son and told the Maharil, Yehuda Leib, he cannot come to hear chassidus for an entire year, which was considered a grave punishment for this tzaddik who was learning from his father. Anyways, but the similar thing the previous Rebbe said about himself. There were once two yeshiva students that needed something, and the previous Rebbe asked his father to help them, and his father said to him, he asked his father basically said, like Nikolai, like I don't know exactly what this means, but something to the effect of like, there's sometimes there's a need to take initiative, but there's also a consequence to take initiative. And also the previous Rebbe was I think alluding to it this farbrengen that yes, there's a need for sacrifice, but at the same time there's a need for sacrifice. There's something that his father wants, but at the same time he needs to take initiative. He also mentioned this farbrengen. He says, I have strength to do, and I have faith that I could do what the mission is, what my father has entrusted me, what I'm supposed to be doing. And he mentioned how the Mendel of Haradok once was approached by a chassid of his and asked for a blessing for children. And Mendel said, I cannot bless you, but if you have faith in me, your faith in me will empower me to bless you. That's some of the things that happened in this farbrengen. It's Hashem. God willing, we'll maybe learn about the rest of the farbrengen another time. But I just want to mention one more point. That is that is the spies that were there. Also, I forgot to mention before the spies. When the Rebbe and Shana came in, the Friedrich Rebbe looked at her, and she looked at him, and we asked her to go back to the room. She didn't go back to the room. She came over to him, and she tried speaking very softly he should listen, and he was crying, and she was crying, and all the chassidim were looking at but they're both looking at each other and crying. And as the previous Rebbe spoke with such emotion that he literally fainted. And they brought the previous Rebbe to the next room, and they poured cold water on him to revive him. And it took about 10 minutes for him to be revived. And the farbrengen continued, and they finished the farbrengen. And at the end of the farbrengen, went on all night. There was a chassid whose name was Rav Yaakov Zarevitcher. Yaakov Zarevitcher sat on the floor, and he sang the famous nigun of the Shpil Zede, the song of the Shpil Zede. The song goes like this: Agevald und Ageshrei und Agefilder Analter Vater Zuch fein sein Kinder. A old father is looking for his children. And then the next part of the song is that the children, the father says to the children, my children, please come to me. It's lonely to be by myself. And then the last part of this nigun is the children say to their father, Father, how can we go to you when there's a guard by your door? That's what the children say to the father. So Mendel Futafas was speaking about this nigun once, and he said that the children have the last word. That the children meaning Hashem is asking us to look for Him. Hashem is asking us to be with Him. However, the children say to Hashem, there's a guard by your door. So Mendel Futafas said, who is the guard by the door? The guard by the door is the evil inclination, the Yetzer Hara. And Mendel said the Yetzer Hara doesn't know about a ceasefire. He has a gun 24 hours a day, 7 days a week by your head. And he wants to get you to do the wrong thing. And that's the guard that doesn't let us go to our Father. That's what Mendel said. And that's what Yaakov Zarevitcher was singing after this farbrengen, sitting on the floor, singing this nigun. There was a lot of, imagine the pain, but I want to mention that at the end of this farbrengen, the word came out about this farbrengen, what the previous rabbis had said, and there was such a inspiration by all of the chassidim that hundreds of new underground schools were formed. As the words of the Friedrich Rebbe became public knowledge in the language of one of the chassidim who was there, he said, we heard something that our fathers didn't hear, our grandfathers didn't hear. This was a Purim. There was never a Purim like this before. Something that never happened in history. As the Friedrich Rebbe to speak so openly and clearly about what they have to do and the sacrifice they have to make. This really, I forgot also to mention that when the previous Rebbe knew that the spies of the KGB were there, he knew they were there, and in fact, he mentioned the Yevsektia with such disdain. He said, Yamach Shema, may their name be erased. In front of them, they were standing there, and they knew, and the previous Rebbe knew that they knew that he's addressing them directly, and he said to them, and they were turning red at the farbrengen. They knew that. I mean, they're standing there as spies, but they're exposed because the previous Rebbe knows that they're spies. And he said that the Yamach Shemam, that they should be eradicated, that we shouldn't have this situation where there are Jews who are trying to destroy Judaism. Anyways, that was the theme of the farbrengen. And again, the point isn't the sacrifice that was then. This point is the kind of thing that Hashem is asking from us today, which is not to give in to mediocrity and to think about it. Can you picture the previous Rebbe standing there, wearing his chest, hitting himself on the chest again and again, saying they have to send your kids to Jewish school. It doesn't matter what's going on. It's incredible. And I actually heard from many Chassidim that not everyone listened. There was the kind of challenge that they had in those days that we can't imagine. Not everyone listened, despite the previous Rebbe's great intense words, didn't reach everyone because it was so hard. If you sent your kids if you didn't send your kids to school, they would arrest you and they would put your kids in an orphanage. But that was a sacrifice that Hashem wanted from the Jewish people. Then and today, Hashem wants us not to reckon with nature, not to reckon with our own limitations, and to go with, as a Mordechai, not to give not to substantiate at all anything other than Hashem Himself. And this is how we're going to go to the victory of the IDF and Eretz Yisrael, the victory of the Jewish people over the exile. And we should see the coming Mashiach Tzedekenu. We won't need to have any more of escafia, any more of inner struggles or struggles that are in the world around, because we'll see the Einam Levade, we'll see a revelation of Hashem in the world. All right, any questions or comments?
Where is the story from?
This is from a farbrengen of the previous Rebbe, and it's printed, this farbrengen.